welcome to Ari's potion cart. Of course. Let me get that health potion for you. This time of year, I get so many requests for this potion that I've actually started pre-making some batches. All that's left to add is some fresh spring water, and 3 drops of morning dew. Now, this does need to brew for about an hour, so if you have errands to run, you're welcome to stop back later this evening. Oh, you have nowhere to be? Oh, well, that's wonderful. You can stay here with me. Make yourself comfortable and don't be afraid to fall asleep if you're feeling tired. Oh, I know. I can tell you some stories while we wait. Let me think. Oh, I know. This man came to my cart looking to buy a love potion recently. Now, I've sold a lot of love potions in my time, both at my traveling cart and back at my parents' shop. And I always give the same disclaimer, that nothing can truly forge love except for genuine connection. And I have seen the aftermath of a poorly used love potion far too many times. A brief period of infatuation, then a harsh wake-up call and a messy fallout. Now, that's not to say a love potion can't also elicit wonderful results if used properly. In fact, I was once invited to the wedding of a middle-aged couple who used a love potion to help shake off their romantic cobwebs. But this man that came to my potion cart recently, his name was Jeremond, I believe. You see, Jeremond hadn't spoken to his father in years. From a young age, he had always loved music, and it was his dream to become a traveling bard. But his father didn't approve. They came from a long line of blacksmiths, and since his mother passed, Jeremond was the only heir to carry on the family business, and in his father's mind, their legacy. So Jeremond ran away. He traveled around for quite some time, learning the trade from anyone willing to teach. And while I haven't personally had the privilege of hearing him play, I've been told he's quite skilled. He even joined a traveling theater troupe to expand his repertoire into acting. When one day, his travels brought him back here to Rodalock. So he plucked up the courage and went to see his father. While I did not pry into the specifics, it went less than ideal. His father seemed happy to see Jeremond, but not ready to forgive. So Jeremond came to my cart looking for a solution to help speed the healing process. So I brewed him a love potion. As a sign of mutual trust, they both drank a little bit of the potion, and it wasn't long before they were embracing deeply. Jeremond apologized for leaving without saying goodbye, and his father admitted that Jeremond's happiness was far more important than the family business. He even made sure to attend Jeremond's last performance before he left town. Now, if that isn't a story of true love, then I don't know what is. Unfortunately, not all of the interactions I've had in this town have been pleasant ones. In fact, just this morning I had a very unpleasant experience with 2 individuals. I was on my way back from foraging when these 2 men blocked my path. I thought it was a bit odd, but I am still relatively new to town, so I simply smiled and bade them good morning. With the sun behind them and their hoods over their faces. I couldn't quite tell, but I got the sense that they were not smiling back. The first one had a bit of a gruff voice, and he said, "Hey, you're not welcome here." Now, I was startled by his rudeness, so I don't quite remember what I said, but I think I mumbled something along the lines of how I was just trying to get back to my cart and I'd be out of their hair in a moment. Then the other one pushed me. Yes, he pushed me. I fell right onto the ground, and some of the mushrooms I had just foraged rolled out of my bag. That was the last I saw of those men. And the worst part is, as they were leaving, one of them stepped on one of the mushrooms. It was a beautiful round sun mushroom. I was sad to see it destroyed. No, I really didn't get a good look at their faces, and their cloaks were plain and unidentifiable. Although when the one pushed me, I did actually catch a glimpse of a beautiful, ornate magnifying glass he had tied around his waist. I noticed it because I used to have one just like it. It was a gift from my mother for my first successful potion sale back at the shop. I was maybe 8 at the time, and I was selling to a family friend who would have bought the potion even if I told him it contained rat droppings. But still, it was a lovely gesture and helped to boost my confidence as a potion maker. I used it for years to identify herbs and fungi. I wore it on a little chain around my neck like this. But one day, while I was out foraging, I stumbled upon what appeared to be a pack of thieves waiting for a carriage or wagon to pass by. As I tried to sneak away, I heard one of them go, "Who goes there?" and unsheath some manner of weapon. So I ran. I have no idea if they chased me, but in my panic, I must have lost the magnifying glass. I suppose it probably caught on a branch and snapped off while I was running. Such a pretty little thing. I went back to search for it many times, but with no success. What's another story I could tell? Oh, I know. By the time I was 14, I had seen just about all the drama circulating among potion makers in my town. My parents were very well regarded for their craft, but with an oversaturation of potion makers, they were having a tough time keeping up their sales among stiff competition. So they decided to consult their trusty friend Trudence and come up with a new potion that would set them apart from all the other crafters. So they started asking around, trying to see what sort of problems were common among the townsfolk. One thing they noticed is a lot of men would come and buy potions to improve their strength or their constitution, but would be complaining about appearances, and yet there were no potions tailored to the appearances of men. Now, this often had a lot to do with the quickly balding population in the town I grew up in. So my parents and Trudence put their heads together and decided to craft a hair growth potion. Now, these were some fun times around the shop. Lots of laughter and always going out and trying to find new herbs and ingredients. They would often send me into the forest with a little basket, just trying to pick out any new plant I couldn't identify in the hopes it was something new with wonderful properties. And the best part was, the potion they created worked like a charm. Unfortunately, Trudence's greed got the better of her. She decided to declare to the world that she alone had created this potion. She spread nasty lies and rumors about my parents, which was only made worse by the fact that she was the head of the Potion Makers Guild, and so her words carried a lot of gravity. That was the end of their friendship and the beginning of a really tough time for my parents and their potion shop. Trudence took advantage of the success and the drama and the spreading of rumors and even barred my parents from the Potion Makers Guild. The once thriving shop had been reduced to just the most loyal of our customers. Mom and Dad had just about lost hope and were looking to give up potion making altogether, maybe move to a different town. This is when I really started to hone my craft. I thought maybe I could bring glory back to the family shop. So I practiced for hours at a time and read every book I could get my hands on. But with Trudence using her influence at the Potion Makers Guild to hinder our every step, it was going to take more than well-crafted potions to get our customers back. So I resorted to shiftier methods. And that's when Sir Godric the Luscious comes in. Entirely made up, I may add, but he is a balding knight, hoping to return to his former glory. So I crafted 2 nearly identical letters from Sir Godric himself, asking for a hair growth potion of the highest quality. One was sent to Trudence, the other to my parents. Both letters instructed the potion makers to deliver their potions to Sir Godric at Town Square at high noon. And it only took a little rumor spreading about the infamous Sir Godric to ensure that half the town's potion makers were also in the square at the same time. Now, with no Godric in sight and 2 hair growth potions, the natural question everyone in attendance asked was, which is better? And to a trained eye, it was pretty clear that my mom and dad's potion far exceeded the potency of Trudence's. And from that day on, the lies started to unravel. And now, of course, it took quite some time to undo months of rumors and hurt, but my parents did slowly begin to regain their notoriety, and eventually the shop was flourishing once again. Oh. Have you ever read the timeless tales of Torvald Saz? No. Oh. My father used to read me a story from this book every night before bed. This book was his gift to me when I left home. No, I haven't actually read any of the stories since I've been on the road, but just having the book reminds me of home. Anyway, Torvald was this famous bard that lived ages ago. He was well known for writing the most captivating stories. And this book is a collection of some of his most popular works, such as The Labyrinth of Dreams, and Quest for the Eternal Crown, and The Enchanted Embrace. I used to love this one as a kid. How about we read this one? Gather round, dear listeners, for a tale of love and fate, of kingdoms and valor, spun in verses and sung from the heart. In a time of yore, in a land of emerald greens and shimmering streams, there lived a princess fair, Alara, with golden locks that rivaled the sun's gleam. Her heart was as gentle as the morning dew, and her eyes sparkled with a hope that knew no end. Beside her, a knight, Prince Adric by name, stood tall and true, his eyes a reflection of the starry night's flame. With sword in hand and honor in heart, he was bound by duty to his land, ready to defend it from the encroaching dark. Their love, like a flame, burned bright and true, blossoming beneath the boughs of the whispering woods, where secrets were shared and dreams anew. Yet a shadow loomed, a tempest on the horizon, as a neighboring kingdom, fueled by envy and greed, sought to lay claim to the treasures they'd hold dear. With a heavy heart, Prince Adric rode to war, leaving behind Princess Alara, tears streaming like rain on a shore. The kingdom sighed. The woods mourned, their leaves now draped in a somber shroud. But Alara, she sought solace in the heart of the forest, where ancient magic slept, waiting to be found. A grove of silver leaves, aglow with mystic light, beckoned her forth, revealing a guardian of forgotten might. The willow spoke in whispers, its voice like a lover's sigh, offering hope in a crystal vial, a chance to bridge the realms and sky. The tear, a vessel of dreams and wishes untold, embarked on a journey through mountains and valleys, across seas wild and bold. It found Prince Adric, wary but resolute, on a battlefield fierce, his spirit unwavering, his heart an armor, an impenetrable suit. As the tear kissed his cheek, a radiant glow unfurled, enveloping him in a warm embrace, rekindling a fire that could conquer any world. With newfound vigor, he fought, a force to behold, fueled by the memory of Lara's smile, a beacon through darkness and cold. Back in the kingdom, the whispering woods stirred from their slumber, their colors vibrant and alive, a symphony of nature's wonder. The willow, its branches dancing in glee, whispered its thanks to the gentle princess for setting the magic free. And then came the morn, a masterpiece painted in gold, as Alara stood at the forest's edge, her heart a tale yet untold. Through the mist, a figure approached, a visage similar yet changed by the light of love's hold. With tears in their eyes and hands trembling with grace, they embraced, two souls reunited, fate's threads interlaced. The enchanted tear, a vessel of magic and might, had woven their destinies, bringing them back into each other's sight. From that moment on, the kingdom thrived, and the love story of Alara and Adric was sung far and wide. A tale of a tear, of two hearts intertwined, of love that surpassed space and time. So remember, dear listeners, in your heart's own quest, true love knows no bounds and can withstand any test. Let me check on your potion to make sure it's still brewing properly. Oh, this is looking magnificent. I love this red color and the way that it glistens. But it still needs to brew a bit longer to reach full potency. So, how about another story? Oh, I know. The Tale of Captain Maliki. Captain Malachi was a local hero before he was promoted to captain. At just age 16, he became first mate on a local ship in town. Everyone was amazed at his skill in navigating the thick fog that frequents Rodon Bay. You see, Malachi was known for having a rather peculiar nose. Some say it stretched a whole sword's hilt away from his face. I'm not so sure if those rumors are true. Nevertheless, Malachi became popular in town after saving a merchant ship. Fog rolled in a few hours earlier than predicted, and with his sniffer, he guided and led the crew safely back to port. Or so the story goes. From then on, he was a legend. After years of being praised, he finally received enough financial backing from local traders and guilds to provide him his own ship for conducting trades. For years, he was the fastest and most reliable sailor in the bay. He was so beloved, in fact, that the head financer, Mr. Wellington, decided to send him on a uniquely secret and incredibly important mission. Malachi was to deliver a large sum of money to kidnappers who had hidden away Mr. Wellington's daughter for ransom. The ransom note he had received was vague and described a location in the bay that no sailor could identify from words alone. No sailor except for Malachi, who was confident he had seen, or, in his own words, smelled before. Therefore, Mr. Wellington took Captain Malachi into his employment for this important task. So, Malachi had his ship loaded with the vast riches from Mr. Wellington, and he prepared his crew to set out for this mysterious location the kidnappers had provided. But Malachi was not planning to search for this location because he knew it did not exist. You see, Captain Malachi had utilized his popularity and reputation to his advantage. He had written the letter, and along with his crew, had kidnapped the Wellington daughter, hiding her away at a safe location on land. After the ship had set sail, with Mr. Wellington teary-eyed at port, hoping for the return of his daughter, the crew let the young woman go. She returned to her father, and he immediately understood that he had been duped by the great Captain Malachi. But his realization was too late, and Malachi and his crew were off to the sea. 2 days after the event, pieces of Malachi's ship began to wash up on the shores of Rodalock. For weeks, everyone spoke of the tragedy of Captain Malachi, and how he was smited by the gods for kidnapping an innocent girl and tricking her father. But then people began to realize that the riches on the ship must be somewhere in the depths of the bay, lost among the fog. For years, sailors and adventurers would scour the bay looking for the remains of Captain Malachi's ship. It wasn't until 5 years after the incident that one diver stumbled into the den of mermaids who seemed surprisingly territorial. This particular diver had interacted with mermaids many a time and knew how to treat them with respect. The mermaids treated him in kind and led him directly into the depths of their den, where the remains of Captain Malachi's ship lie. Among the torn and broken lumber lay gems and golds too much to count. The mermaids let him take what he wished and returned to tell the tale. After many years, the mermaids had moved on from their den, and the rest of the treasure was recovered by anyone with the means to do so. But what happened to Captain Malachi and his ship remained a mystery for quite some time, until a diver recovering wood from the ship noticed claw marks, the claw marks of mermaids. Now, mermaids never attack human ships. There has always been a truce between the humans and mermaids, a mutual agreement of trust and respect. To find a ship clawed and destroyed from mermaids' hands could only mean one thing. Captain Malachi angered and outraged the mermaids. We still don't know exactly what him and his crew had done, but to make mermaids angry to that degree, it must have been horrendous and worthy of their wrath. Speaking of which, have you ever heard the mythology of mermaids? No? Well, the story goes that back when the earth was still being formed, there was a man named Mare. He was charming and confident, and this quickly made him popular with the gods. So, the gods decreed that his lungs be accepting of both air and water. The lungs obeyed, and from that day forth, Mare was able to breathe underwater. He relished this gift, but fancied himself superior to other humans because of it. As time passed, Mare grew confused, feeling himself to be superior, but not quite knowing where the feeling came from. Rather, it simply felt innate. His overconfidence made him seem an expert in many things for which he knew very little. One day, a man approached Mare, begging him to cure his sick son. Mare, in his ignorance and blinding confidence, decided that the one thing that makes him special must be the solution for the boy's sickness. So Mare forced water into the boy's lungs, and he was drowned. The gods saw the father's grief and the death of an innocent boy, and they were angered. So they commanded Mare's lungs to no longer be accepting of air. The lungs obeyed. Mare began to suffocate and was forced to dive off the cliffs into the ocean. For the rest of eternity, Mare was doomed to live in the sea, unable to drown, but no longer able to breathe the air above. I try to be patient with all of my customers, no matter their request, but that combination of ignorance and overconfidence, I had a customer come to my cart soon after I arrived that had a very specific and odd request. He wanted a potion of fire breathing, which is, in my opinion, already a very strange request. Fire breathing potions are extremely difficult to make, which in turn makes them expensive. And the effects of the potion don't even last that long, making it more of a party trick than a truly useful concoction. Not to mention it can be quite painful to breathe fire. So I asked a few questions, trying to see if perhaps there was a different potion that would suit his needs just as well. But this man was very vague about what he was going to use the potion for and insisted that it must be a fire-breathing potion. So I complied and began to prepare a fire-breathing potion. But then he insisted that I add amethyst, reasoning that its mana-charging capabilities would make the fire more powerful. But amethyst and fire orchid petals do not play nicely together. The reaction is extremely unstable and often results in explosion. I told him this, but he insisted on adding the amethyst to the fire-breathing potion, becoming increasingly perverse. I tried to diffuse the situation by suggesting alternatives, but his insistence became more and more aggressive until I had to tell him plainly that I would not be making him a potion today and ask that he leave my cart. I was the only person I've ever had to turn away. I hated doing it. Although I suppose I can take solace in the fact that complying with his request would have put us both in danger, not to mention potentially burned down my cart. And that's something I could never forgive myself for. That is almost done, just a little bit longer. I think we may have time for one more story. And I have just the one. The tale of two sisters. Now, you may have heard some retellings of this epic, but I think this one is by far the best. Of course, we won't have time to read the entire book, but perhaps the first chapter? Long ago, there were two sisters named Nari and Kari. They were twins and were inseparable. In addition to looking the same, they enjoyed the same foods, they played the same games, they liked the same boys. They even had their own language. Nari and Kari were also always getting into trouble. The sisters schemed and toiled away in their free time, planning their escapades and adventures. You see, there was one difference between the two girls that lay in the depths of their hearts and what drove their aspirations for the future. Nari grew up enamored by sword-wielding, wand-grasping, arrow-shooting adventures. They would sweep through town, bragging of their wares and wonders through extravagant and fantastic tales. Encapsulated fully, Nari always wanted to make greater things of her life. Kari, on the other hand, could not care less for adventures. She did not dislike them, but they only registered as regular folks with a particularly dangerous career choice. Kari was more enamored with the little things in her life. She appreciated every moment as it passed her by, truly living in and experiencing the moment. The only thing that pulled her out of this Zen state was her sister, who she respected and adored with all her heart. Again, the two sisters were truly in sync with one another on as many details as there were blades of grass in the fields. And as the two grew older, this never changed. They continued to respect the only difference between them. Their love for each other exceeded any notion that their one difference was of any value. When the girls reached the age of 14, Nari believed that they were finally of age to leave their hometown. She had heard stories growing up of Bark Von the Great, an adventurer and hero that left his hometown at 14 and eventually saved the town of Erebol from an invading monster horde. Yes, that is the same great city of Erebol. Seeing inspiration, she schemed with Kari to sneak out of their home, gain passage on a transport ship with the adventurers leaving town, and explore the island of Persh. They did so in the middle of the night and snuck into containers of food they knew were dedicated for the travel. They knew their plan had succeeded when they felt the sway of the ship become wilder and the sounds of footsteps clattering above them increased in number and frequency. After a couple hours' time, the smell of the sea air felt like salt crystals forming in their nostrils. Their feet and hands grew cold in the crates of citrus where they sat, but they had each other, so never was there a dull moment. They planned out every possibility. If they were to be found, if the ship were to travel to a different location, if they became trapped in the crate, if pirates attacked, or if they were separated at any point. The only thing they had not prepared for was a storm. Their hometown rarely saw true thunderstorms and only ever received light showers. But a storm on land is nothing compared to a storm at sea. A giant whirlwind had made its way through the pass between their hometown and Persh. As the crew up above frantically prepared the vessel for a rough voyage, the girls unknowingly gabbed and laughed with stories below deck. Eventually, As the ship's rocking became worse, the girls heard voices yelling above. The swaying turned to rocking, and eventually the girls were forced to brace themselves back to back, with their arms against the walls of the crate, so as to not hit their heads or be thrashed about. Surprisingly, this didn't seem to faze either Nari or Kari. Both seemed to draw strength from their hearts, with Nari exhilarated by the adventure, and Kari at peace in the beauty of nature and the trust and support in her sister. But their hearts were torn apart in a cloud of anxiety as the crate is tossed about, landing in the worst way possible. A piece of the box slammed into a metal bar and burst inward into the box, directly towards Nari's head, making contact. The box landed on the ground, and Nari's body fell into Kari's lap. Immediately, Kari began to panic as she saw a line of blood dripping from Nari's skull. Kari quickly looked and kicked a paladin just the right way to make the box open fully. As the waves were continuing to crash into the ship, Kari assessed the likelihood of the ship surviving the current conditions. Water was collecting on the lower deck, and everything was loose, ready to cause more damage. She balanced herself upwards and used the momentum of the boat to position Nari's body in such a way that it landed on her shoulder, causing her small frame to shudder under its weight. Kari's shoulder dropped, and she had to lay Nari back down because her arm wasn't strong enough. She had an idea, though. Grabbing rope and lying on top of her sister, she tied them together while using her legs to pin them both in a corner and hide from the debris. After tying them together, Kari rolled over and used her entire body weight to move to her knees, and then slowly got up. She could carry her sister's body this way, but not for long. She started to move herself along the wooden ballasts to the only way out of the doomed vessel, the ladder. Kari waited for a rock in the boat and flung herself over, grabbing onto the bottom rungs of the ladders. She then placed one leg onto the rung and began to push with all of her strength to rise up. The exhaustion and weakness in her legs from being stored up in a box was finally able to overcome the strengths caused by the mental shock. She could barely move her other foot to the same height. So again, she waited and used all of her strength at the perfect time to gain a little bit of air and get her bottom foot up to the next rung. She continued this pattern patiently, one rung after another. When she almost got her head out of the lower deck, she realized the technique was weighing on her. And even worse, the higher up she got in the boat, the bigger the swings got. She was slipping at almost every turn. She finally made it all the way up and saw all the sailors frantically attempting to control the sails. They were failing. Kari could hear the bones of the ship crack and twist, foretelling its demise. Kari propelled herself onto the deck and again worked herself carefully onto her legs. Holding to the mast for balance, she used her momentum after the largest rock to slide to the end of the boat, where she leapt off in a frantic dive into the pitch-black waters. Just as she propelled away, she heard a huge snap, and the main mast broke at a point below the deck. This caused a ripple of cracks and snaps that eventually burst part of the lower side. The boat quickly took on water, and within minutes, it was actively sinking. The girls were barely treading water, and Kari had to manage both of their weights. Finally, after minutes of barely not drowning, a large piece of debris floated close enough for rescue, and in her last ounces of strength, Kari swam to the debris and hoisted them both atop it. The next 20 minutes of the storm, Kari spent clinging to the edges and creases of the lumber. She held so tight that she started to get splinters. She could feel the wounds as the salt water splashed into them, but she persevered, and after 20 minutes, the storm had faded. The waters had returned to a calm, and they were both alone in the dark. Kari passed out from exhaustion, waking up the next morning with the sun glaring down. As Kari got up and untied her sister, who was still unconscious, everything got dark as a shadow enveloped the raft. She looked up to see a large, singular mountain surrounded by some wilderness as a standalone island. Their raft floated gently up to the beach, almost as if they were guided there. Kari got out and dragged her sister to a safer place. Her hands were still torn from the raft, making the attempts to grab her sister's shirt unbearable. She positioned Nari up against a tree, overlooking the ocean. Finally, with her sister in a safe location and her heart at ease for a moment, her entire body reminded her of exactly what she had just endured. Her legs buckled underneath, causing her to fall to her knees. Her hands ached and swelled in pain with every heartbeat as she could see the damage on them. Her dry lips helped remind her that she had drank seawater accidentally, which was contributing to an aching headache. And as her body reeled from these ailments, she lost consciousness and passed out again, falling gently into Nari's lap. When Kari woke again, the sun was setting. The entire new day had vanished in her much-needed rest. She rose slowly and noticed Nari was still asleep. She was breathing fine, but seemed unresponsive to her name and all the poking and prodding Kari could manage. Kari didn't know what to do. Nari was always the leader, the true adventurer set on exploring the world. What was Kari going to do without her sister? Was she capable of taking care of herself, let alone her sister? The anxiety rung in her head like a church bell flung into a tornado until she looked outwards toward the sunset. Although it was beautiful, a more immaculate sight lay before it, a singular crate, like the ones in their deceased ship. Kari was confused. The crate was lodged well in the sand. Could it have moved there during high tide? It seemed so fortuitous. She slowly rose and walked over to the crate, which was already open, facing upward. Inside the crate was food, water skins, rations, flint, sleepwear, all the essentials. Immediately, she tore into a water skin and drank her fill of safe, clean water. She then brought it to her sister and poured some down her throat. But Nari's body moved reflexively, coughing it up. Kari gave up, worrying that she would harm her sister, and continued to burrow through and fill her stomach with what she could. The pain in her head began to dissipate with food in her stomach, but her hands still ached from the damage. She cautiously brought everything out of the crate to a safe location at the tree line, but couldn't move the crate itself. In the remaining hour or so of light, Kari grabbed what she could to make a fire and set up a small base camp. She laid Nari down gently on a bedroll and positioned herself in the sand for the night. Because she had slept through the day, she struggled to find any sleep. She tossed and rolled around for hours, trying to fall asleep, but she could not calm her brain. When was her sister going to wake up? Finally, she realized the only way to calm her nerves was to be closer to Nari. She snuggled up next to her sister, wrapping Nari's arm around her. Kari felt safe and comfortable with her sister by her side, and finally started to doze off. Before she fell asleep, she prayed for her safety and prayed for her sister's safety. The twins had been by each other's side for all of their lives, and today was no exception. Despite the circumstances, Kari told the gods, "Please let us live. I will give up anything. I will undergo any and every tribulation you can throw my way, just to let us live, or at least to let Nari live." The two girls lay there, contemplating each other's warmth as Kari rested again. But the next morning, when Kari woke up, she noticed her sister's arm was gone from her comfort, and she turned to find Nari was entirely gone. Frantically, she jumped up and started scouring the area, yelling for Nari. "Nari, Nari," she yelled, but no response was to be had. Then, in the strangest way, Kari saw an identical crate land next to the one from the day before. Hesitantly, she walked up to it and found it was filled with the identical food, rations, water skins, etc., except there was slightly less than last time. Assuming her sister was up and exploring and being worried about the tide, she quickly brought everything back up to the base camp. But on the last item, a blanket, she found a note. "Kari's deal the gods have sealed. In 10 moons' time her fate revealed. To save her sister she must strive. Through trials and tribulations she must survive." What a cliffhanger. Now I'd love to tell you the rest of Kari's tale, but we simply don't have the time. She was on that island for nearly 10 months. And your potion is ready. There you go. Thanks. It was so lovely to share these stories with you. I'd love to hear which one was your favorite. Feel free to stop back anytime for another potion or perhaps another story.